Alright, what's going on, guys? Trev back again, here to bring you another video. This one's going to be doing my breakdown video for The Walking Dead Season 8 trailer. So this should be a fun one. Let's go through scene by scene of everything in the trailer and give our thoughts. We'll kind of break it down. Link to the trailer will be in the description, and I hope you guys like it. You can write your own kind of breakdowns and what you think in the comments below. Speculation, predictions, theories, it's all welcome in this kind of video. That's really what we're looking at. Can't wait to October when The Walking Dead Season 8 actually premieres. Getting things started off in the trailer, we of course have the Negan scene with Gabriel about the shitting pants, which is really funny. It's probably my favorite scene in the trailer. But the reason, of course, why he's saying this to him, as you can see from the window, is that there are a whole ton, a shit ton, of zombies just outside. They are most likely at the sanctuary and are most likely trapped inside of it. Gabriel probably involved with the assault on the sanctuary that brought in all the zombies, being most likely steered by Daryl. And now Negan and the Saviors, along with Gabriel as well too, are trapped inside. Then we have Rick shining with the sun in behind him. We have Carol and Tara, who seem to be sitting somewhere. Most likely this is the overpass where they're probably waiting for the zombie herd to pass by. We have Carl that kind of walks through and sees some of the cars. We get to see Morgan and him kind of looking serious as he knows what's about to happen. And then Maggie and Rick and the others waiting, along with Ezekiel walking through, and just kind of seeing everybody at attention, getting them ready for what's about to happen. Daryl taking a swig of water as he looks over at a shit ton of zombies, which he most likely is going to start leading towards the sanctuary. Maggie and Rosita looking a bit concerned. The hilltop with Enid kind of chilling out. Aaron looking a bit concerned and worried about what's about to happen. And Tara doing some, make-believe shooting, probably getting ready for what's about to happen. Dwight receives a note which says tomorrow on it. Most likely we're thinking with this one he's being signaled that tomorrow is the day when the survivors are going to lead the huge group of zombies, the zombie herd, to the sanctuary. So they're probably letting him know, as of course he is kind of the inside man for the survivors currently with the Saviors. We get to see the inside of some buildings which have some low light. Looks like either some kind of maybe office building or a hospital or something. We can see Rick and Carol kind of poking around inside there. It could be a Savior's outpost from maybe the first few episodes. It may not necessarily be the sanctuary. If they're going to pin down, Negan and the Saviors at the sanctuary, Gabriel may be caught, but it's hard to tell how many of our survivors are actually going to go into the sanctuary at that time. Most likely what we're looking at here is probably one of Negan's outposts, a different location. After the sanctuary's been pinned down, Rick and the others going around to clean out these different outposts that the Saviors have. Through a tiny eye slit, we see Morgan walking past at nighttime. Hard to tell which location this is at. It could be at the hilltop, but it could also be at the Kingdom as well too. Aaron driving with a barrier, one that looks similar to what our survivors used during the No Way Out storyline of Season 6, which I do like because it also makes it kind of natural that they would do something like this again, since they have led a zombie herd away from Alexandria before. So this is kind of a different strategy. Instead of leading one away from you, this is leading one towards an enemy, which is kind of cool. Someone has been tied up here or roped up, but seems to be using a piece of wood to kind of chip away at the rope so they can escape. It looks most like Carl, but it's really hard to tell since we can really only see the character's hands and, the plaid shirt they're wearing. So, I mean, really hard to tell. Possibly Carl. I don't know. Then we have someone looking out of what seems to be a small hole in a large shipping container, the type of thing you would see maybe on a transport truck or something, custom seal approved and all that. From another scene later on, we see in the dark a figure of what looks like possibly Rick, not wearing anything except for, boxers type of deal. We do know that Jadis kind of fancies Rick, so is it possible this season that we could see the Junkyard group capture Rick during one of the outpost missions or something in the first few episodes? That would certainly be interesting, and it would be cool to see our group try to rescue Rick if he was, in fact, the one that was captured. Some different cars with some of the barriers, as you can see, driving into what looks like probably the hilltop, at least from what we can tell. We see a bunch of our different greater survivors because, of course, we have Alexandria, we have the hilltop, and the kingdom kind of all joined together now. And Rick giving a speech at what looks like the hilltop, but it's possible it could be somewhere on the road as well, too. We can see here on a walkway, we have Daryl, Tara, Morgan, and Carol, most likely getting ready to set things up to attract the zombie herd towards the sanctuary. You can see the top of the sanctuary there over their left shoulders in the middle of the background there. That's their target, so most likely they're just kind of setting things up, getting ready. This one's probably from episode 1 in the premiere before Daryl gets on the bike most likely and starts driving towards, leading the herd towards their final destination, the sanctuary. We have some bombs being planted by Jesus covered with some cardboard. These are for Daryl to shoot later on so he can light these up, which will create, of course, a lot of light and a lot of noise, which is going to pull your zombie herd in one direction so they can basically have Daryl at the front on his bike steering the herd towards the sanctuary. Have Daryl heading out on the road here, and it looks like Carol is kind of looking at him. Most likely he's leaving at this point to go and get started with pulling the herd. Of course, Carol knows how dangerous this is going to be, which is why she kind of gives him this look like she's a bit concerned. Dwight on the radio. Now this is going to be interesting as to what he's seeing. Is he seeing the survivors rolling in here with a zombie herd on its way? Is he going to radio that in, should he be the one to see it, or is he going to allow it to crash into the sanctuary? And is this his moment to kind of turn on Negan and the others by not informing him that these survivors are at their gates? These survivors all together now marching into most likely one of the outposts, including Tara and Morgan. Rick and Daryl going in somewhere, probably one of the outposts, and actually from the background and everything looks like it could be in close vicinity to the junkyard. So is this maybe where Rick gets captured? Hard to tell, but either way, I really like just kind of seeing Daryl and Rick together, brothers in arms again. Just think it's a really cool setup here, really cool sequence. Ezekiel most likely getting the kingdom troops ready for the battle that is just up and coming. And we get to see Daryl riding on the motorcycle, and he's shooting up a bunch of the different explosives that have been planted for him by Jesus. And we see the huge zombie herd moving under the overpass on their way to the sanctuary. Morgan and Jesus kind of having a fight, which is interesting because there's no way for us to know what the cause is of the fight. But I'm thinking maybe this is kind of predictions. Possibly Morgan kind of going into his crazy mode again and Jesus trying to maybe talk some sense into him. Maybe something to do with the mission and the things that they're having to do to defeat the saviors. Rick fighting someone, it's hard to tell who exactly. Ezekiel and the kingdom getting ready to fight against someone as well too. Shots going off, shots being fired. Most likely just very simply saviors versus survivors here. In this one we have Simon and some of the saviors, but it's also kind of cool to see that Gavin is with them. So it's going to be cool to get them, to see them get their comeuppance. We can see Jadis and the junkyard group here, and you can see that storage container right there in the background, very similar to the one that we saw that could potentially have Rick in it. We see the eye hole there as well too, which we saw the other character looking out of, and this would be cool to see kind of them try to rescue Rick maybe in the first few episodes. If it is Rick in fact they capture, in terms of writing, I think it would make sense if you had maybe Michonne be the one to defeat Jadis and maybe kill her at the end. That'd be pretty cool. Daryl firing off at another planted explosive, and then we have Shiva, who seems to be fighting a whole bunch of zombies, so that'll be interesting to see how Shiva fares against a bunch of zombies, because they could be pretty tricky for her, as a lot of times their fingers can be very bony and kind of sharp, so we'll have to see. Hopefully Shiva will be okay. We'll see how that turns out. Aaron at the sanctuary saying that we pin them in, it takes care of itself. So obviously their strategy here is basically pin the saviors back, allow the zombie herd to be on its way. They get out of there in time for the zombie herd to crash into the sanctuary like a tidal wave, explaining the scene at the beginning that we see with Negan talking about Gabriel shitting his pants. And then of course Rick and the others heading out afterwards to take out the outpost, because the saviors are not just located in one location, they are spread out. They do have outposts with different little factions and groups of saviors. But yeah, that being their plan. It's a good plan. Negan smacking Lucille on the table in frustration, most likely due to the set of circumstances that he now finds himself in this season. The junkyard group meeting with someone, but I just can't tell who it is. The one with the black hair looks like it could be Michonne just based on the hair, but it's really hard to tell. And then we have the scene here as well where we see someone in that storage container at the junkyard that looks most like Rick. But again, write your comments below if you think it's someone else. A few people have mentioned it possibly being Aaron or somebody like that, which would be also cool. But if it is Rick that they've captured, that would make the stakes pretty high for sure. Morgan saying he doesn't die, which, as I said in my review, just makes me think he'll probably be killed off this season even more. A whole bunch of cool fighting sequences. One where we have the Saviors shooting down a whole bunch of Kingdomers, it looks like. Someone being smashed by a semi-truck, which is wicked cool. So, again, we'll have to see who is in that car and who it is that's being racked by the truck. But, man, that's just a really cool action sequence. Rick driving up and switching cars, going from one Jeep to another. And we wrap up this part with Daryl shooting at something. It could be an explosive device or it could be some savior. The Walking Dead credits, which are no longer sort of decayed. They are now kind of back into fresh condition, sort of in your gunmetal kind of look with the black and white, you know, more representative, I would say, of the Saviors, more representative of the battle and the war that is to come this season with All Out War, versus kind of a focus on the zombies and on our survivors sort of decaying over time or kind of dying over time, so to speak. Rick waking up, we can see the cane there and some flowers beside him. This one I've done an entire video on with this scene explained, so you guys can check that out. It's in the channel. A lot of questions like, is it a dream sequence, this kind of deal. So far as we know, it's not a dream sequence. It's kind of from the future, and it may be out of chronological order because at SDCC, Andrew Lincoln actually did not have his hair cut with the super huge beard, so it sounds to me more like they shot this sequence out of chronological order. We may see it in the premiere in the first few episodes, and then eventually maybe at the end of the season they'll kind of come back to it with Rick sort of waking up after the events of All Out War. And just to clarify for people, he's not dying. This isn't his deathbed. He's not totally out of commission or anything like that. But after this time, after the events of All Out War, he may not necessarily be jumping between cars and doing that kind of action-oriented stuff that he did earlier that Daryl can do after some injuries and all the battles and all the fights. Rick, going forward in the future, will most likely be taking kind of a more leader, backseat leader type of approach where he's leading from a home base rather than being at the forefront of every battle due to his body, including his leg with the cane and everything, just starting to kind of break down over time. And that's it for The Walking Dead Season 8 trailer. The premiere is going to be October 22nd, 2017. Of course, mark your calendars. Very exciting to see The Walking Dead return then. You guys can write all those comments below. How do you break these things down? What are your predictions? What are you seeing? What are you thinking? And I hope you guys liked the video. If you did like the video, thumb it up below. You can also subscribe to the channel at the bottom left if you want to see tons more Walking Dead videos coming before the season premieres. I'll be back again tomorrow with a Q&A for you guys. That's it for this one. As always, it's Trev. I'm saying peace. Later, guys. See you tomorrow.
You better subscribe.